Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good everything to you as you come into the field of turning towards life. This is Lizzie and Justin, as usual, here. For us, it's a Sunday morning, and I'm in the middle of the countryside overlooking the sea on a little family Easter holiday. It's April 2026, and we are here for episode 400 and something of the Turning Towards Life podcast, which is a complete delight. Justin, you've chosen a source for us this week, which, like most sources, is entirely discombobulating and confusing and excellent. And I spent yesterday with it, wondering and feeling and being confused and seeing if I could find some language. And hopefully today's language will also just be new as well, finding our way into it together as we put the source between us and the wonderful Maria Popova, who made this source. So thank you, Justin, for the diversity, as usual, of the places that you find the spirit of turning towards life expressed in the source, and then you bring it here. It's really wonderful. And welcome everybody from wherever you are, whatever the time is, whatever situation that you're in, however you're sitting or standing or walking or running, whoever you're with, you're all very welcome here.
Thank you, Lizzie. Welcome to you, welcome to me, welcome everyone. Yes, it's our 443rd episode, Lizzie. So welcome to this 443rd conversation, and to all of you who are with us. We know that people are finding us afresh and anew. So to those of you who are just finding your way into this conversation, welcome. And to those of you who've been here much longer, however often you watch on YouTube or turning towards .life, or listen to us on all the podcast platforms, you are so very, very welcome to be here. And thank you to all of you who are telling loved ones and friends and colleagues and people you meet about this. We know that this conversation spreads because you tell one another. So thank you for pointing people who are important to you to the way of this. And the source that we have this week, it actually is it comes from a beautiful card, which is part of 100 cards made by the very excellent Maria Popova, that come in a box called an Almanac of Birds. And what I'll do, Lizzie, when we put this episode together, I'll put the picture of it on our website, and there will be a link to it from the show notes. And the website is turningtowards.life. And you can always come over there to see any of the older conversations, but also to find all kinds of resources. You can contact us there. You can find out about the coaching programs that we at Thirdspace run. And we have our 2-day foundations of coaching coming up in a month from now, in May, online, that you can join from anywhere in the world, and our professional coaching course coming up in July, our course that starts and takes place every year. So follow the coaching link there. But you can also sign up to our emails and get this in your inbox every week. You can find out about Turning Towards Life Live. And I wanted to say something particularly about this, Lizzie. Although we've just closed the doors on our second season, our third season, which will then be open to everyone, as you know, Lizzie, begins in the autumn of this year. So September 2026, it's not too early to sign up. And we've been so committed to busting past the walls of the podcast, busting past you and I, Lizzie, and making this into community. And the second season is off to a really wonderful start. So I think we want to keep talking about it to people. That's all available on the website. Maria's poem that we're going to read comes from words that are taken from a book of birds. So this is the poem that goes with the great American white egret. And what Maria says she did was read about the birds and then choose words from the account of the birds in the book that she was reading. And every card has a beautiful illustration and then the poem on. And it's a really wonderful resource. And this one goes like this. If you closely examine the space between the fear of being wounded and the desire to be seen, you will discover that love has danger only to those who guard against it. that it is not obtained by great acts of heroism, but let in through the aperture of time and ease, that it may leave before it returns, to remain and surprise, for love is always wilder than you imagined it, than you supposed it to be. For love is always wilder than you supposed it to be, and the great wonder is how it continues to hold as it continues to change.
Thank you, Justin. If you closely examine the space between the fear of being wounded and the desire to be seen, you will discover that love has danger only to those who guard against it, that it is not obtained by acts of heroism, but let in through the aperture of time and ease, that it may leave before it returns to remain and surprise, for love is always wilder than you supposed it to be, and the great wonder is how it continues to hold as it continues to change.
I'm really taken by something you said before we read this, Lizzie, about being discombobulated by the words. And one of the things that I thought about this practice that we're in itself is that it's really a practice of trust, of trusting that the source itself and you and I, in paying attention and being open, it will unfold itself, and that I don't need to know what I'm going to say. And 43 previous conversations have shown me that this is the case. And I really feel this about this because I read it and I hear you read it, and there's something in me that goes, oh yes, that seems true. And then I'm not really sure I know where to start to say something about it. But I think where I want to start is something to do with looking at my own and our own neediness when it comes to love. Because I think the places that I've got tangled up in love that is in the human realms, whether that's romantic love or family love or friendship love or all the kinds of, I feel like, Lizzie, I'm a person who loves very, very deeply, very, very quickly, and have got tangled up in this a lot, which is, oh, but if I were really to imagine that the way I love were to get reciprocated, and the longing that I have both to love and be loved, if I were to dare to have that be reciprocated, then I would immediately be open to danger. And the first danger that there is in loving anybody else in whatever genuine way that there is that they may not love me back in the way that I long to be loved. And that kind of love that has got, what's the word? Like a big grasp in it. I want to love you, but then I have to be loved back by you in a very particular way, is fraught with peril. Because the truth is, as I found out, is that way of loving is, which I think must come for most of us from when we're very young and we don't have power to have the world love us in particular ways, and we need a lot from the big ones around us. I certainly feels very sort of young and early in me. But that kind of love, the love that demands in that way, is inherently an attempt to try and control the world and control other people in a way that can never be done. It's actually impossible. And so if my way of loving is to love and then to demand, either secretly or outwardly, for me it's usually been secretly, oh, now I have to get back something which is of a very particular flavor and a particular shape and a particular intensity and a particular kind of attentiveness, I cannot have that happen. And if that is a source of great pain and worry for me, then loving is always going to be incredibly, incredibly tricky. Incredibly tricky.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, in the most intense versions of this, Lizzie, it's been filled with worry, rumination, not very elegant or dignified ways of trying to get somebody else's attention, testing out whether somebody loves me, all of those kind of things. And they're all intended, all of those moves, are intended to deal with what Maria points out in the third and fourth line, which is that there's a space between the fear of being wounded and the desire to be seen. And I have learnt over time much about what Maria says, which is that you will discover that love has danger only to those who guard against it, which trying to control it is a kind of guarding against it, because I want it like in these bounds, not more than this, not less than this, and just this shape. And that it's not obtained by great acts of heroism. It's not obtained by, that had been my strategy so often, and sometimes still now, like I have to act to have this happen, and all the time. But it's let in through the aperture of time and ease. And so I love this line. When you read, I think what cut through all of the very young parts of me that get desperate, as well as, there are much more settled, wiser, much more open, deeper, older aspects of me that get this. But the thing that really reached those more desperate parts is love is always wilder than you supposed it to be. And I wonder if that's what challenges so many of us, is to imagine that, is to make the mistake of imagining that this presence, this something in the world that it so easily can be in us and of us as humans, if we will choose it, if we will dispose ourselves towards it, can never be contained or controlled or made just the flavor we want. It's not like buying a product off the shelf. It's something much more elemental, and there's an enormous amount of aliveness and risk. Anyway, so where this leads to me to is to have been wondering a lot about trust and about letting go. And I don't mean first trust in other people. I actually mean in myself. That what it takes to enter into the possibility of being one who loves generously, which I think is the first responsibility, rather than trying to get love from anyone else, is to recognize that the consequences of genuinely loving will be wilder. I want to read that line again. Wilder than I ever supposed it to be.
Mm. This is such a great source, Justin, and all that you say is so... I can feel the joy in me in being in this conversation because I think it has so much gold in it that we might be able to distinguish between all of these things and love. Because I think so much of the time we conflate need with love, or control with love, or being seen the way we want to be seen with love, and 100 other million things that we conflate with it. And so when Maria's poem says that it is let in through the aperture of time and ease, to me it speaks of the nature of love, that it's not of our kind of personality mechanisms. Like, that's not the order of love. That's the order of the wrangle that we have between human beings, which of course is held by love and has love infused in it. But when I get onto myself about whether something really is love or not, it really helps me to distinguish between genuine acts of love, whether it's towards me or me towards another person, and ones that are kind of laced and lined with all of my wounds. And that is such a brilliant and excellent and hard lesson that I've been learning and continue to learn the whole way, because also everybody else is really onto it too. When I come at you with, I remember, Justin, when I first met my excellent, wild and honest husband who doesn't let me get away with anything, really, I would say, I love you. And he would say, thank you. I was like, no, you're supposed to say you love me back. What are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm interested in what you really mean by that. And I would say, well, I didn't have an answer for it. I was in some mere kind of voluptuous expression of myself that I didn't really know what it was actually, really, either. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, I think it means I want you to say you love me. Or I think it means I want us to be safe together or something. So there were all these layers of it, all these layers and all these layers of stuff inside I love you. And part of that journey for me is just showed me to myself. Because at the time, I didn't look at why I was saying what I was saying. I was just unconsciously throwing out all my need with the phrase "I love you." And these days, I say I love you very freely to many different people, and I really mean it. And there's zero expectation in that. And of course, there's times when, well, I don't know, actually, maybe I have cleaned my act up quite a lot. But I really feel like it's a route to seeing what all of our personality dances are. It is inside the question of love and what it is and what it isn't. So I'm loving the conversation and the source and the way that you've started it, actually, Justin. I would have started, I think, from quite a different place. So I love this way that you've begun it, because it's an invitation to see what's underneath everything. Always underneath, like what's underneath, what's underneath, what's underneath. And then there is revealed our curriculum. So how do I bring to you, I love you, or an act of love, an act of something towards you, and then treat whatever the response is in me to whatever your reaction is as my curriculum, as my learning. Because you don't have to receive whatever I've got to give you. You don't have to say yes to the act of love that I come towards you with. You don't even have to like a gift I give you. You can say, I don't like that. And then I have to go, oh, okay. All my intentions towards you, what am I going to do with those? You know, it's like, it's so potent. The giving and the receiving and the loving and the being loved has so much content for living and learning inside of it. And that's why it feels so joyful to talk about it with you, I think.
Yes, I do think that the phrase I love you can teach us such a lot about ourselves and about what we're really trying to do when we say that to other people. And like you, Lizzie, I have a related history of this, of more in the past having that be a way to deal with my woundedness. If I tell you I love you and you tell me back, then I won't feel so wounded and needy, and then I'll feel settled. Except, of course, it doesn't work, because that is trying to fill a hole in myself by your response to me. And the hole can never be filled that way. So what I found is with that is, if I tell somebody I love them with as a secret agenda to get them to tell me I love me back, so that the hole will be filled, the hole is empty, the hole is no longer filled about 10 seconds later. So then it's like, well, now you've got to tell me again. And if you don't tell me in the right way,
Yes.
So I think this territory, and whether it's the phrase I love you to a partner or a husband or wife or a child or a friend, that all the different people we might say I love you to in different ways, it is really super territory for finding out ways in which we may be loving, but we may be more trying to grasp something back in order to stabilize ourselves or settle ourselves. And yes, I feel like these days I'm also much more free in saying that to people and then letting it go. And then it feels like a gift to be able to tell somebody how much I care about them, which is really what I'm saying, how much they matter to me, and let it be just what it is. I love what you're saying about gifts as well. Learning to let go of the other person telling us we're okay by liking the gift that we give them, all of that. But I'm also thinking, Lizzie, that love I was listening to something just this morning, actually, that I hadn't thought of was related to this, but of course it is. It was someone talking about this word loving kindness that is often used. It's in the popularization of the Buddhist tradition in the West. Lots of people talk about loving kindness, like sort of one word. It's also a Hebrew word. So in the Jewish tradition, there's a Hebrew word, chesed, which means loving kindness, and people say loving kindness. And the person who was talking was saying, it doesn't really mean anything if you just keep on saying loving kindness. So what he said was, you should put a space in between the two words. And you should talk about loving kindness. What does that loving kindness, what does that mean? And I loved what he said is, it's a disposition towards being kind wherever it is possible to be kind as a way of being loving. And then he said something which I thought was really fabulous, and it's directly related to what we are both saying. He said, to talk about love as a disposition, he talks about it as an existential disposition, is then to talk about love not as a feeling, but as a way of orienting ourselves to the world. Because the I love you and then waiting for you to tell me you love me back is really mostly about feeling. I'll tell you I love you, then you'll feel a particular way. And because you feel a particular way towards me, you'll tell me, and then we'll all feel fine. But he was saying there's something actually much more serious and much more wilder and much more important, which is that love doesn't always feel any particular way. I can love you and be angry with you. I can love you and feel disappointed with myself. I can love you and feel confused. I can love the world and feel terrified for it. I can, all kinds of things. And so loving as a disposition is more like a kind of an orientation, like a way of conducting ourselves or a way of comporting ourselves towards life. And we can invite ourselves into the possibility that we might conduct ourselves in a way that keeps ourselves open to, and now I want to come back to Maria Popova, to that which is wilder in us than we suppose, and that which continues to hold as it continues to change. There's a line in a Mary Oliver poem that we may have read, Lizzie, which begins, my work is loving the world. Not through great acts of heroism, as Maria says. I feel like this conversation and this poem is opening me to want to look in a different place from the kind of love that loves in order to get, but towards the disposition towards loving that allows me to bring myself with the most generosity, but also the most openness to the wildness. Because the truth is that if I actually love you, Lizzie, then one of the things that I have to do is to be open to the wildness in me and the wildness in you. You may be nothing like I expect. As my friend, as the person I have this conversation with, as someone I've known and care about very deeply for very many years, to imagine that you should fit into my idea of who you should be is barely love. It's mostly control. So can I orient myself toward the disposition towards loving kindness towards you and towards myself, regardless of the human that you turn out to be? Can I allow you? Can I hold it even as you and I continue to change? Can I be committed to something that is wilder than my need to be seen, my need to have my wounds and holes filled by being in your presence? And I think that's a wonderful and big thing to ask of ourselves, and an important thing to ask of ourselves.
My gosh, it's such a rich reflection. I'm noticing, Justin, as well, this disposition thing, as in being of the disposition towards loving. It's not separate from the conversation about making the distinction between what's love and what's not love in terms of my need or my wants and controls. Because I think when I have kind of examined all of the things beneath I love you, for example, just because that's what we were talking about earlier, it's like I get to bring myself home to myself again and again and again, and realize that this lovingness that's wanting to come out, that's wanting to connect. Oh, I don't even know whether I know how to say this properly, but it belongs on the inside of me. So if I can own my experience of feeling loving on the inside of me and remove the need to have that seen or appreciated or anything, but I can just actually have it for myself. I can sit here in the state of lovingness. That really matters, to come from that place, to have done that work. When we talk about loving the world, it's not like an instant decision. This is not what I found anyway. Like, I can't just go, I'm going to be loving. Of course, there's that intentionality there, but there's, in my life anyway, a big distance between intentionality and things actually being a truthful statement of reality now. So the intentionality of lovingness really matters. And that dovetailed with my own personal healing inner work journey really matters. Like, my intentionality doesn't deliver on everything. I feel like I have to be onto my own distortions and my own wounds and be in a healing practice around them in order to truly be that in the world. I can't just have intentionality, but my intentionality really matters to begin that work in the first place and to begin it again and again and again. And so I'm appreciating that there's this possibility that this lovingness is really our nature, our essence, and that we're cleaning the windows, as it were, so we can see that essence more clearly. And as I clean my window, the love becomes brighter and more available to me inside my life, and also as I perceive the world as well, because of course the cleaner I feel in here, the cleaner I see the world. The more acts of love I can see happening in the world, rather than going around complaining about everything because it doesn't meet my needs. I could actually see the things that don't meet my needs as acts of love that don't meet my needs, but my needs are secondary to the fact that there's an act of love happening in the world. So I'm feeling this kind of renewed connection of the inner demeanor of lovingness, and how that isn't separate from both the intentionality to be loving and the inner work of becoming actually loving, and that being a way of moving in the world.
I've been thinking, just as you've been talking, Lizzie, that what gets evoked for me every time you use this word lovingness is that to be human is that. So another way of saying it is, to be human is to have things matter to us and to care about what matters to us. That's what being human is. Things matter. And one of the ways that you could say that we express the mattering of people, of ideas, of commitments, of projects, of our orientation towards the future is that we love. That's what we do. And I think it's really important. It's one of the things I learned from reading, bringing someone else here briefly, bring in Martin Heidegger and his philosophy that's been very important for me in understanding a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the work that we do in coaching and things like that, Lizzie, is that it is one of the defining characteristics of being a human is mattering. That we're not just machines. We're so far from just machines. And it's one of the big, I think, delusions and misunderstandings about the current interest in technologies that get called AI, because they use language in these very, very convincing and compelling ways. But what they can't do and don't do is have things matter to them. And we do. So as I listen to you you've been talking throughout about cleaning up our act, that looking at ourselves well enough and cleaning up our act is that in order to really stand in, generously in, taking care of what and who matters, actually, we really do have to look at ourselves, because if what's mattering to me is that I get to feel a very particular way, because that's one of the ways in which the world might matter, my world actually becomes very, very small. So all the time what I'm doing is calculating, will this feel the way I want it to feel? Or will I get seen the way I want to get seen? And that is a kind of mattering, but it's a really, really tiny one, and it's centered in so close. And then there's another kind of mattering, which starts for with another person, which is, you matter to me regardless of how I feel around you. You matter to me simply because you exist. I look at the face of you and there's another. And can I be brave enough and bold enough to have you matter to me? And then my love towards you isn't going to be the kind of love that is on cards that you buy on, Valentine's Day or birthday cards in a shop, which reduces it to something very sweet and simplistic. Then love could be courage, or love could be truthfulness, and love could be gentleness, and love could be taking a stand for something on your behalf and on my behalf, and love could be creativity, and love could be giving you space, and love could be committing myself to something for the next 30 years. And so in a way, where I'm getting to in this conversation is feeling invited by you and me, and then by Maria is to I'm going to come back to this line, that love is always wilder than we supposed it to be, which also means it can be bigger than we supposed it to be, bigger than we've taken it to be.
Yeah. It's a really excellent thing that we're speaking about this in the world as it stands today as well. Imagining a world where we took each other to be this. And I'm also filled in this moment with appreciation for all the people who've really taught me about love. And it's not like they've been those greeting cardsy kind of relationships. They've been the hard ones, the hard ones that actually differentiate love from all of the wrangles that we get in as human beings. And as you said, that love is like, it's bigger, it's bolder, it's much more present than the fleeting reactivity that each of us can be. So this is beautiful, Justin. Thank you. And thank you to Maria Popova for doing that amazing project. Isn't that wonderful? And we get more next week as well. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So Maria's box of birds is called the Almanac of Birds, and we'll plant a link to it in the show notes. And Lizzie, as always, thank you for being here, and everyone, thank you for being with us. Next week will be our 444th episode, and there's something really rather lovely and satisfying about all those fours. And we'll come to it with the source chosen by you, and we really look forward to being together and being with you all next week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.